hugged me, then left.
Whoa. How did it feel?
It hurt.
It was one of the longest and most painful weeks of Peter's life. Peter had grown up experiencing a lot of heartache, but this hurt in an entirely new way, and he had no idea what to do with himself. He's lost a lot of loved ones throughout his life, but he's never lost anyone that he's had to see again and again every single day. He couldn't bring himself to do anything anymore. Eating, showering, he couldn't sleep, let alone patrolling. It had even popped up in the Daily Bugle about Spider-Man's absence this last week, but he just didn't care anymore. If it wasn't for May, Ned, and MJ, he would have just been rotting away in his bedroom in that maroon hoodie of yours. Peter regretted asking if you wanted to get back together. Why in the world did he think it would have been that easy? He grew up with you, and if there was one thing about you, it was that you were stubborn when you put your mind to something. He had ended up stalking both you and Brad on Instagram. He felt himself die a little every time you posted about the other. But what felt even worse was the realization that you had deleted every post Peter was in. That night, he spent 2 hours straight just crying. But what felt so backwards to him was that now it was Saturday night, and it was the first time all week that he didn't get to see you in person. Instead of that making him feel better at all he wanted to do was go and see you, even if it did hurt. He just really missed you. And when he saw his suit hanging in the closet, he couldn't resist.
You cry and cry all the time.
No, I don't usually...
That's your power.
He fought everything in his head that screamed how bad of an idea this was, and in the first time in a week, he put on his suit. But instead of him going out to fight crime, he went to go see you instead. Peter glanced at his reflection in the mirror in his bedroom after having just slipped on the suit, mask in hand. He looked like a wreck, but he couldn't care less, and with a sigh, he tugged on his mask, the eyes suddenly adjusting for him. "Hello, Peter," Karen's voice greeted. "It's been a while. Is everything okay?" "Not really," he responded, heading over to his window, beginning to climb out. "I'll tell you later," he mumbled, making his way on top of the fire estate. "Okay. There's a robbery currently 2 blocks away." "Oh. Are the police on their way?" "They are half a block away from the crime." "Then they can handle it themselves tonight," he said, shooting a web at the building across from him. "We're gonna visit Yasmin." And with that, he swung on the web. Karen fell silent on the swing there, which wasn't too long. He only lived a few buildings away. Once Peter had reached the building next to yours, he climbed up to the roof. Before the two of you dated and you found out he was Spider-Man in sophomore year, he would sometimes swing by to check on you after he went patrolling. Something about fighting crime, then going to see you safe and sound always comforted him. And he found that the roof on the building next to yours, as creepy as it sounds, had the perfect view into your window, and viewing you from the roof was much more inconspicuous than hanging out on your fire escape. "Why are we visiting Yasmin?" Karen asked, once Peter reached the roof. "I thought you said she broke up with you." "She did," he answered sadly. Peter walked to the edge of the roof, your bedroom window coming into view. "I just wanted to see her." He crouched down on the ledge, so he was sitting on his haunches. "Peter?" He hummed. "Do you miss Yasmin?" "Yeah, I do. A lot, actually," he mumbled. The curtains of your bedroom window were pulled open. He couldn't see you, but the light was on, and he could see the familiar bedroom that he's been in a countless amount of times. "Have you tried asking her out again?" Peter let out a short, sarcastic laugh. "Yeah, but it's not that easy. She's with someone else now. And she hates me." Just then, your bedroom door swung open, making Peter immediately tense as he watched you as you walked in, running a hand through your hair and shutting the door behind you. Peter held his breath as he watched you move about your room. Was this an invasion of your privacy? Yes. Did Peter understand that? Of course, but right now, all he wanted to do was see you. He wanted to remember what you looked like when all of your attention wasn't on Brad. He wanted to remember what it was like not to see you with a scowl every time he was near you. Right now, all he wanted was to bask in the peacefulness as you went about your night. He watched as you walked over to the bookshelf in your bedroom that only held your comic books, and he watched as you picked one out. You grabbed the comic book and made your way over to your desk, which happened to be right in front of the window. And it was the first time that week that Peter finally felt relaxed as he just observed the quiet scene. He watched as you flipped the page every few seconds, the way you bit your lip, and you pushed back a strand of hair away from your face. It was all so simple and mundane, but it was you. And Peter would kill to be laying on your bed right now and watching you read from there like he usually did, instead of now having to watch you from the rooftop of a building. But this was all he had of you now. All he had were the few things you left at his place, the pictures and the videos, one shared class, and this moment. And he had come to face the fact that he had actually lost you now. And so he was prepared to draw this moment out as long as possible. But unfortunately, all good things come to an end. And once he saw you flip the comic shut and stand up to close your curtains, he knew it was time to go. So with a heavy heart, he swung back to his place, having to face the fact yet again that he broke your heart and now you didn't want anything to do with him. Nightly visits became irregular. Every night at 8, Peter would swing by your place and just watch. He knew it was wrong, but he couldn't help himself as it became a guilty pleasure of his. Some nights, he'd end up crying the whole time. Others, he wouldn't say a word. And he knew he should try to move on, but he still didn't want to. He was terrified of forgetting you. He was also able to slowly get back into patrolling, but only for a short while. His spider sense hadn't been working properly and he ended up getting hurt often, even showing up to school with a black eye one day. Eventually, 2 weeks had passed and Peter hadn't felt any better. The only things that did improve was that he started to eat again, and he wasn't crying as much as he was before, but he still couldn't sleep very well, and he was still constantly depressed about the whole breakup, which had been starting to affect his grades in school. Currently, Peter was in lunch sitting with Ned. MJ had decided to sit with you and Brad, and right now he couldn't take his eyes off the two of you as he glared daggers into Brad as he watched him play with your hair while you talked to MJ. Peter, Ned said, pulling Peter out of his thoughts. What? He asked in surprise. Ned sighed. I've been trying to get your attention for like 2 minutes. Oh, sorry. What were you saying? He asked, glancing over at the two of you again. Ned shook his head. Doesn't matter. You want to switch seats, or at least sit on this side so you don't have to see them? He asked, referring to you and Brad. No, I'm fine. He trailed off, his eyebrows furrowing when he saw Brad moving closer to you and press a kiss on your temple, making Peter snap the fork in his hand in two. Ned looked at it in surprise as Peter looked down at the now broken utensil. Oh. Oops, he said, dropping the piece that was still in his hand. Are you sure you don't want to switch? Ned tried again. No, seriously, I'm fine, he said, shaking his head, looking back down at the lunch tray in front of him. Ned sighed again. You know, I don't mean to sound pushy, but when are you going to get over her? It's been over a month since you two broke up and you're a mess. You never even showed up to see Star Wars with me. Right. I'm sorry, Ned. It's still in theaters. We can go this weekend. Which was a promise he did keep, because if he didn't at least make an effort with his friends, he'd just be as bad as before. I don't think I can move on. She's moving on, though. And you're just gonna hurt yourself more if you don't start to try. She already told you she didn't want to get back together, he said, referring to the conversation that you and Peter had in the prop room. Peter had told him and MJ about it the next day at lunch. Peter pushed his lunch tray away and put his arms on the table, resting his chin on top of them as he looked up at Ned now. He shrugged. But what if she changes her mind? He mumbled. But what if she doesn't? Peter fell silent and instead asked another question. Do you know when she stopped calling me pretty boy? That had been one of the questions that were gnawing on the back of his mind, but most of all, he wanted to know why he didn't notice. Ned frowned. I don't know, just that it was a long time ago. Peter fell silent again, making Ned decide to change the subject. Come on, let's go to the computer room and play some games, he said. Peter nodded, and the two of them left the cafeteria, with Peter throwing another glance at you. Peter got through the rest of the day feeling out of it as usual. He was thankful when the last bell of the day rang and he was finally able to go home. He was at Ned's locker. He rarely stopped by his own anymore due to awkward encounters with you, when his plans for the night suddenly changed. He saw you and Brad walking down the hallway hand in hand as you both headed towards the exit. Usually the two of you never left together since you took different ways home, and now, out of sheer curiosity about what the two of you were up to, he wanted to follow. "I'll see you tomorrow, Ned." He quickly rushed out as he made his way down the hallway, hearing Ned mutter something back in response. Peter kept a lot of distance between you guys as he followed you outside, and once the three of you made it farther away from the school and it was clear that the two of you were headed towards your apartment, he quickly ran into an alleyway and changed into his suit, leaving his backpack webbed behind a dumpster, and with that, he was quickly swinging towards your apartment. Again, he knew how wrong this was, but all the common sense in the world right now couldn't stop him from wanting to know how Brad treated you when it was just the two of you. Peter only had to wait about 15 minutes before he saw your bedroom door being pushed open through your window from where he laid on the edge of the roof. "Wait, Karen, they're here!" Peter whisper yelled, interrupting the conversation he was having with his AI. Peter quickly sat up and leaned forward, the eyes of his mask narrowing. You walked in, Brad following close behind and closing the door once you were both inside. He dropped his backpack off by the door, while you put yours by your desk where you usually left your bag. Brad walked over to your bed and fell on top of it in a starfish pose while you sat down at your desk. The space between the two of you put his pounding heart at ease and helped him swallow back some of his jealousy. It was clear the two of you were speaking to one another, but he couldn't make out the words the two of you were saying. "Karen, can you activate whatever, activating enhanced reconnaissance mode," she said, and suddenly he could hear both yours and Brad's voices loud and clear, and your giggles suddenly floated through his ears. "I think you have a couple fans," you giggled, looking at Brad from your spot at your desk. Brad raised an eyebrow at you. "Care to explain what you mean?" "A couple of freshman girls came up to me today and started asking questions about you." Brad started laughing along with you. "Really? Like what?" "They asked if you were nice? And I told them yes. Then they asked how smart you are, and I told them very." You smirked at him. "Then they decided to get a little personal and asked if you were a good kisser." Brad smirked back at your flirty tone. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them—" "Karen, deactivate reconnaissance mode!" Peter shrieked. "Deactivating enhanced reconnaissance mode." And suddenly your voices cut out, and Peter let out a sigh of relief, falling back onto the rooftop. Peter groaned. "That was awful." "Is that Brad?" Karen asked. "What? Oh, yeah, that's Brad," he grumbled, sitting back up and daring to look back over the ledge to see what you were doing. He breathed another sigh of relief when he saw the two of you getting up to grab your backpacks, probably about to start on homework. "She seems very happy with him." Peter rolled his eyes. "I bet she was happier when she was with me." "I thought she broke up with you because she wasn't happy." "Well, before the blip," he sighed for the umpteenth time. "God, the blip ruined everything. But anyway, I don't trust Brad." "Why is that?" Because it's Brad!" he yelped. "What kind of guy asked out a girl who just got out of a 3-year relationship? And he also just seems very controlling. He's always dragging her by the hand places, and just the way he talks to her sounds like he's trying to manipulate her or something. I don't know. And also, he hadn't seen her for 5 years with the blip. You'd think he'd move on during that. I don't trust him." He sighed. I just wish I knew why I pushed her away. If that didn't happen, we'd still be together." Everything fell quiet as Peter went back to observing the two of you, but it turned out to be pretty boring, which actually ended up being something he was grateful for. He didn't know what he would do if the two of you were all touchy behind closed doors. About 2 hours passed before Karen spoke up again. Peter was laying back down on the ledge, just gazing at your face through your window. "You know, Peter, I could psychoanalyze you if you want," she suddenly piped up. Peter furrowed his eyebrows. "Why would I want you to do that?" "Well, you've stated multiple times that you don't quite understand why you pushed Yasmin away, except for that it had something to do with the blip. So if you want, I can psychoanalyze you and see what the cause was." Peter hummed. "That actually doesn't sound like a bad idea." "Okay, you can do it," he gave permission. Karen was silent for a moment, processing whatever it was she needed to process before starting again. "It seems to me that after the blip and having to come to the realization that the world was in shambles and dealing with the stress from everyone expecting you to be the next Iron Man, you overworked yourself as Spider-Man to live up to these expectations and tried to at least attempt to fix the world. And also after the blip,
You have to face the fact that the Avengers are practically non-existent now, along with the fact that Tony Stark is dead, and instead of dealing with your grief properly, you pushed it to the back of your mind and started to unconsciously push Yasmin away because you felt that Mr. Stark, along with the other Avengers, had sacrificed a lot to save the world. So you sacrificed one of the only things that made you truly happy as a way to justify not being able to sacrifice as much as the Avengers did.
Peter felt silent, the gravity of what she said feeling like both the weight had been placed and lifted off of his chest at the same time. Karen?
Yes, Peter?
What's wrong with me?
I'm sorry. I don't quite understand.
He quickly sat up. Seriously, what's wrong with me? I hurt this amazing girl all because I didn't know how to grieve? How the hell do I not know how to grieve? I feel like that's all I've been doing my entire life, he shouted. I will be the first one to admit that I fucked up, and I fucked up bad. And if I could redo the whole thing, I would have just talked to her or my aunt about how I felt, even if I didn't understand it. And I feel like with everything you just said, it's still no excuse for what I did to her. She didn't deserve anything I put her through. And God, what the fuck am I doing right now? I've been spying on my ex-girlfriend when she deserves to finally move on and be happy for once, even if it is with Brad. He was panting now. And also, what the fuck was I thinking when I asked her if she'd go out with me again? Am I insane? Of course she wasn't going to agree with that. Not even to mention how selfish and insensitive that was of me to even think about asking her that. Why am I so fucking stupid? He sighed, shaking his head in defeat. In that moment, he turned his head to look at the two of you, and how Brad was now getting awfully close to you, spinning you around in your chair and leaning down to kiss you. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Peter yelled, Karen, they're kissing!
Isn't that what couples do?
Yeah, but that's my girlfriend!
You just said she's your ex-girlfriend,
she corrected, making Peter groan. That's what I meant. I need to stop them. Look, they're going to her bed now. He shrieked as the two of you stumbled backwards to your bed, Brad sitting down as he placed yourself on his lap. Shit, Karen, what do I do? He couldn't shoot a web. If you saw one of his webs, you'd know he was there. He looked down at the roof, noticing a piece of rubble that broke off the ledge, and in a sheer panic, he picked it up and threw it at your window. But unfortunately, he miscalculated how hard he threw it, and suddenly the sound of shattering glass filled his ears, as well as yours and Brad's ears, as the two of you snapped your head towards the window. Peter's eyes widened, and he dropped flat on the roof, the risen ledge blocking him from view. What the? Your voice now rang through the air due to the broken window. Peter slightly peeked his head out from behind the ledge, seeing how the two of you stared at the broken window in surprise and confusion. I think we should get your parents, Brad said, looking at the mess, the broken glass scattered all over your desk. Yeah, come on, you said, the two of you shuffling out the bedroom to find your parents. Peter sighed in relief and sat up, looking back over the ledge and your now shattered window. Oops, he muttered, and the realization of what he just did just sunk. I think I need help. I can't keep doing this, he sighed.
If you're sorry and still in love with her, why don't you try winning her back?
Karen suddenly asked. What? Peter asked incredulously. Because it's crazy, and I already told you it's not that easy.
No one said it was going to be easy.
Yeah, but she hates me. I screwed everything up, he said sadly.
Everyone deserves a second chance, Peter.
Peter let out a short, self-deprecating laugh. I've already tried apologizing. She doesn't want to hear it.
Try again.
I can't.
Then again,
she cut him off. Karen.
And again,
she cut him off.
Until you get it right.
Peter fell silent, soaking in what Karen just told him. But what if I annoy her? What if it just makes her hate me more?
You'd be fighting for her, Peter.
He fell silent again and thought. The hopeless romantic in him feeling a bit of hope at the thought of fighting for the girl he loved. It would be hard, and it wasn't something that would work overnight, but if it won you back, then it'd be worth it. It was true, he fucked up, and no one knew better than him right now, but he also knew if he had a second chance, he'd do everything right this time. Losing you had been one of the worst experiences he's gone through. He was still deeply in love with you, and if it didn't work, he would respect your decision and finally move on. But if it did, then everything could go back to the way it was before the blip. Alright. Peter jumped to his feet. I'm gonna fight for her. Do you mind if I bounce some ideas off of you? He asked.
Not at all.
Thanks. I need to clear my mind though, so we're gonna go for a swing around the city. And who knows, maybe stop some crimes, he said, now in a slightly better mood, even feeling a bit of excitement as he started to come up with ideas and plans on how to win you back. And with that, he shot a web and began swinging, planning on staying out for a few more hours. You ran a hand through your hair, watching as your mom was cleaning up the glass from your desk. You were sat beside Brad on top of your bed. So, how did it break again? Your dad asked as he stood behind your mom, trying to get a look of the window frame. You shrugged. There's a piece of concrete on the fire escape. I think someone threw it at the window. Your dad frowned. That's weird. At least neither of us got hurt, Brad said, making your dad purse his lips. You placed a hand on his knee and gave him an apologetic smile. Neither of your parents were fans of Brad. They clearly preferred and trusted Peter more, and having to deal with the sudden change of you bringing home a different boy. But then again, they didn't really know what the last few months with Peter had been like. Your dad sighed. I guess I'll call someone and have them replace the window while you're in school. You hummed. Alright. You hadn't noticed Brad staring at something in your room until he tapped you and asked, What's that? You looked in the direction he was pointing and spotted a box labeled Peter in the corner of your room. Oh, that's just all of Peter's things, you shrugged. Took me a while to find everything he's left. I need to give it back sometime. You huffed. It's been over a month since the two of you broke up, but it still weighed heavy on your heart. Oh, Peter, your mom suddenly said. I miss him, she said sadly, and you could see Brad was beginning to feel awkward again. Yeah, your dad agreed. Good kid. You rolled your eyes. Whatever. You groaned. Brad's phone suddenly vibrated and he quickly picked up, finding it as something to distract him from the situation. He let out a quiet groan. I gotta get home. My mom just texted me. Alright. I'll see you tomorrow, he said, leaning up to kiss his cheek before he got up. Bye, he hummed back. Have a good night, Yasmin's mom. Yasmin's dad, he said, earning a grunt from your dad and an absent-minded bye from your mom. Once Brad had left, you flopped back on your bed. Do you guys have to be so curt with him? You groaned. We just don't know him very well yet, your mom said. And we miss Peter. He's such a sweetheart. You groaned again. Yeah, but now he's my ex, so can we please stop talking about him already? Fine, your dad agreed. We'll try to be nicer to Brad and forget about Peter then. But I still don't trust him. Something just seems off with him, and I know you don't like Peter anymore, but he was a good kid. Besides, you're the one who can't let go of his things. You shot up in bed. What? You yelled, affronted. He gestured to the box you had been talking about just minutes before. You found all his things weeks ago, and yet they're still here, he said in amusement, clearly finding your frustration entertaining. There was no malicious intent behind his words. Your dad just liked to tease you. Fine, he said. I'll take them back to him now, you said in a challenging voice. All right, then go. Be back for dinner, he grinned. Fine, I will. You stood up from your bed and headed over to the box, picking it up. I'll see you guys in like 45 minutes then, you said before leaving the bedroom and heading for your front door. Try and make up while you're there, your dad shouted. Shut up, you called back over your shoulder, hearing him laugh shortly after. You rolled your eyes and slammed the door shut behind you as you started walking down the hallway, but gradually began to slow down until you came to a full stop as you realized what you were going to do. You looked down at the box in your hands and bit your lip. Giving Peter back his things and going to his place to take back yours really made the breakup feel final. Sure, you haven't spoken to him in what felt like forever, but you still had his things, and as long as you had his things, he'd still be somewhat a part of your life. You were a better actress than what people gave you credit for. Yes, you looked and felt much happier after the breakup, but it was a lie if people thought you were moving on smoothly. And the fact that Peter tried to apologize and that he kept staring at you in class and at lunch, it pissed you off how he started to care again, and that was probably why you felt like you had taken 2 steps back. But when it came right down to it, Peter hurt you, but Brad made you happy. You liked Brad. You really did. Which is why this was good. You'd go to Peter's, give his stuff back, and get your own things, and then you'll continue to move on. And with that thought, you were walking down the hallway again, beginning the 15-minute walk to his apartment. By the time Peter had reached his apartment after deciding to call it a night, he was in a much better mood. His talk with Karen helped to lift his spirits tremendously, and now Peter felt more determined than ever because now he was forming a plan. And that determination was a much better feeling than the hopelessness he had been feeling after you lashed out at him in the prop room. Peter was on the side of his building as he climbed up the wall to his window. "I think it could work," Peter said to Karen. "It'll be a lot of trial and error, but..." He pushed his window open and began to climb in. "I think it could work," he trailed off, his eyes widening immediately in shock because the moment he climbed through the window was the moment May had walked in the bedroom with you close behind, box in hand. "Yasmin?" May inwardly groaned. She had been expecting Peter to be out longer, and to be honest, she was a little nervous to see the two of you interact after the state Peter's been in all week, especially after Peter's failed attempt to fix things which he had told her all about. You were tense. Seeing May was awkward, but now you went completely rigid as you saw Peter climb in through his window as Spider-Man. "Hi," you greeted lamely. In a few seconds, Peter finished climbing in through the window and now stood fully in his bedroom. He tugged his mask off. "What are you doing here?" And just like that, the better mood he had been in was completely extinguished. You held the box in your hands a little higher. "I have a bunch of your things you left at my place, and I wanted to pick up my things too." Peter felt like he was caving in on himself with your words. "Oh," he muttered. May cleared her throat awkwardly. Okay. I guess you two will sort everything out yourselves. And I need to go finish dinner," she said before shuffling out of the room, leaving you two by yourselves. You start. "I only have the one box, and I kinda needed it to bring my stuff home, so..." You trailed off, ignoring the desperate gaze in his eyes, which seemed to be the only way he could look at you now. "Oh, sure," he stuttered, coming over to pull the box out of your hands, quickly placing it on the bed before rifling through it, using it as a distraction. You looked around the room for the first time since the breakup. It was much smaller than his room in his old apartment, since he had to move after the blip. You quickly noticed the chair in the corner of his room stacked with a bunch of your belongings. "Oh, are those my things?" you asked as you wandered over to the chair. Peter looked back at you. "Oh, yeah." He felt a tug on his heart, realizing that you were really taking your stuff back, and it hurt him more than he thought it would have. "Where's my blanket?" you asked, looking through your stuff. Peter's eyes suddenly widened as a blush overtook his cheeks. He looked down at his bed, seeing the familiar pink fabric tangled with his own blankets. He started, noticing you had spotted the blanket on his bed with obvious signs that he had slept with it. It got cold last night," he said in an attempt to cover up his embarrassment. "Sorry." He grabbed the blanket and reluctantly handed it to you. "It's fine," you said, fighting off your own embarrassment. "And, my hoodie?" you asked, placing the blanket with the rest of your things. Peter stiffens. "Shit," he thinks to himself, because currently said hoodie was in his backpack. He started taking it with him to school, and said backpack was still wedged behind a trash can in some random alleyway. "Oh, I don't have it," he blushes furiously. You furrow your eyebrows. "What? What do you mean you don't have it?" I don't know where it is. Got lost," he says, clumsily making up an excuse. "Okay," you drag out the words, suspicion laced on your tongue. "Guess I'll have to get a new one then." Peter sighs in relief for two reasons. One, you didn't press on the matter of him losing it, and two, he'd get to keep the hoodie. "If that's everything, I guess I'll head out now." You walked over to Peter and pulled the now empty box in front of him with you and over to the chair. Peter bounced back and forth on the balls of his feet, watching as you put your things away. It was awkward, of course it was, but somehow that same question that had reared in his head in lunch was back on the tip of his tongue. "Okay, I'm gonna go now, so bye," you said, box now filled with all your things as you started heading for his bedroom door. "When did you stop calling me pretty boy?" he suddenly blurted. You stopped, letting the question sink in before looking back at him. "When you stopped calling me princess," you answered simply. Peter frowned and stared at the ground. "For what it's worth, I really am sorry," you sighed. "I know you are. I just wish you figured things out sooner," you said before continuing to walk out. And all Peter could do was watch, his world feeling shaken as he might be watching you leave his bedroom for the last time, and he really couldn't handle that thought. He sat down on his bed, already missing your blanket, and he knew he'd have to go get your hoodie before bed. The only way he could sleep now was if he was enveloped in your scent. He couldn't stand not doing anything anymore, his plans suddenly coming to mind again. The determination from earlier slowly making its way back in. He blinked away the tears. He was tired of crying. He needed to stop feeling sorry for himself and listen to Karen. Peter was going to fight for you. And he was going to do it right, and hopefully, by the end of it, you'd be his girlfriend again, but if it came down to it, he would settle for just being friends, because Peter didn't want to live a life that you were no longer a part of. But right now, he needed to talk. Peter didn't want to start anything new with you just to screw it up again, and the only way he was going to be able to work through his grief and emotions after the blip was to talk about it. So later that night, he asked May if he could talk to her, and of course she said yes. He was determined to get better for you and prove that he wasn't the Peter that pushed you away anymore. So, Peter talked. May listened.